attention for a few minutes, including Mary Ellen's in the back. She doesn't hear me. It's time. Why don't you? Yeah. Okay. So, hi. Welcome everybody to this Making Miniatures presentation that we've put together. And I want to introduce my two cohorts in this presentation that have been working with. We've been working together on this project for over 10 years, actually. This is Mary Ellen Frank. Mary Ellen is a noted doll maker from Juneau, and prior to doll making, she was an economist for the state of Alaska. And she took a doll making workshop from Dolly Spencer. And when she took that, you might know her as a master doll maker. Mary Ellen's life changed overnight, and she within months quit working for the state and then took up doll making, and she's curator of the doll museum, Aunt Claudia's Doll Museum, that's in Juneau. If any of you have not been there, it's a really terrific museum that's on Franklin Street.
It's right above Hearthside Books, right in downtown Juneau, in what is truly the triangular building.
Yeah. So also with me is Elizabeth Knecht, and Elizabeth has worked at the Alaska State Museum, is now a retired employee, and works for the school district on arts curriculum, arts programs in the grade school system. She's a graphics designer by trade and was our graphic artist for many years, from 1985 until into the 90s, right? And I'm Lisa Golisek, and I also work at the Alaska State Museum, and I'm the visitor services manager, and one of my roles is to do education with young children. The workshop that we have for you today is called Making Miniatures, and today we're focusing on the first time some of the Tlingit and Haida regalia. And we came up with this project about 10 years ago as a way to engage kindergarten through 5th grade kids in making these dolls in order to appreciate and understand the cultures of Alaska. And we're not trying to minimize the importance of regalia in any way with this, but as a tool to introduce kids to the vocabulary associated with regalia, let's say a button blanket or a tunic. And also, you can use it any opportunity, any way that you want to introduce it to clan lineage, who might have rights to wear something, who might have rights to use something. But miniatures are just something that young children really, really enjoy playing with. Some of the images I have in here deal with other cultures of Alaska, and because we've done these usually focusing on one group of people at a time. And so what we have here are some little dolls, chenille stem dolls they're called, and chenille stem is just a fancy name for pipe cleaners. And we learned another fancy name today, or just a couple of days ago when we were talking about this, that Mary Ellen introduced me to, and she said, you know what I found out? If we do our instructions for making these dolls with a hairless pipe cleaner, they can see the steps better. And I said, you mean wire? Yeah, that's it. And so it was. So the hairless pipe cleaner and the pipe cleaner are both used. And what we're trying to do with a lot of these dolls, and in this image we might be able to see it as well as the next one, is pick materials that are absolutely inexpensive or things you can get for free. You might be able to find some of these things around the house. These were an Athabascan figure, and the clothing is designed based on some moose hide clothing that's in our collection, and it has beadwork on it. It's also got a little bow and arrow, and that I designed that with a rubber band so it really shoots arrows, and it can shoot them across this room. And so, but what we were doing is introducing the idea of what it's like to live in that region of Alaska to these kids. Introducing young kids to what are snowshoes, why do they work? And in this case, those are little wooden biscuits, discs that you put in on things, and they're tied on with rubber bands. So it's some pretty easy stuff. The bow is a stir stick, a coffee stir stick. So I think these are things that you can think up of other tools and things you can make with kids. And those are some great images. Here's Elizabeth, who's registering children, and I just have a few slides on the museum activity itself. And they're getting registered, and they're getting a Ziploc bag so that when they go around to the museum, we'll do these things at different centers with a volunteer. Usually we try to set up throughout the whole museum. We use every aspect of it. And the really cool thing about doing this activity in the museum is that it's amongst the materials, the actual objects, the authentic objects, and that's one of the missions of this. We want kids to appreciate the art forms and get introduced to that vocabulary that I mentioned before, and learn about appropriate rights and appropriate use to use some of these things. And here I'm introducing, and if you were to do this activity in a cultural center, a classroom teachers know this, but if you're doing this activity in a cultural center, I recommend sitting down and talking to the kids away from the materials, because just like you dig into the materials and don't really listen. Doesn't that mean? So the kids have clipboards in this case, and one of the things you might notice they've got their finger is that this was off of that Athabascan exhibit, and I was showing them how to use their finger to do a dotted line and how that dotted line then might look like a string of beads. And so we're actually adding this element of art elements and art principles into the process of patterning and that sort of thing that's going on there. So these kids, and you'll notice that these children are really young. And so that exercise of making a straight lines of dots can be really hard, but that's a great way to start out, I think. Here's Mary Ellen, and she's helping kids make clothing at this station. What generally we do is we have some materials, and we'll have templates as well as patterns, and they mean two different things to us, which we'll explain a little later. But they are tracing out their patterns for fabrics and that fit these miniature dolls. Another station is here where another volunteer is just making the figure itself. And at this center that I'm going to be at, we're going to make human figures. These are a great way to get really young kids, 5-year-olds, making a human figure and being really successful at making this little doll. I think they're just tickled when they get that done. Another workstation, you might notice, this is kind of a bad image, but it's the only one we seem to have right there, is that you'll notice that there's actual clan regalia in the background. Behind the kids were some snowshoes within sight, and we'll try to set up centers where they're looking at the authentic things, learning about what these objects are actually made of, how they're used, who would use them, and then recreating them as miniature. Another case where another station where they're making yet another piece of regalia or a tool. And then I'm going to turn this over to Mary Ellen Frank, who's going to talk about, I mentioned where we used it in the museum, but we've also done these in other places. So she's got a couple slides here.
What do you do?
Clip that on here. And you might just hang on to this if you don't have a place to, or you have a pocket.
I have a pocket. This is So that's bringing the kids into the museum and doing the activities in the museum. But we've also taught teachers, all the art teachers come to a place in Alaska and study art exercises there. So we've taught teachers how to do these exercises in their classrooms. So Amy Jo Miners, who works at Auk Bay Elementary School, she took the exercise back to her school, and the entire school got involved in it, all the way from the kindergarten kids up to the 5th grade. The kindergarten kids made dolls. The older kids interviewed them and then did and what they were doing was they had a spare room and they were going to make their own museum. So the kids made dolls from all over the world, including and this is me, Amy Jo, and then B. Shepard, who owns the doll museum in Juneau that we talked about. And we're looking at the entryway into Auk Bay School where they introduce the museum and have some displays up about it. And then Scott Carley from the museum came and talked to them about different jobs at the museum that you could have. And this is like a recruitment center for museum jobs where the kids have listed each museum job and what's required to do the job, as if they were recruiting museum staff. And then this is the museum. These slides are a little better than this. We're trying to accommodate filming for it. But you know, these different tables each have a different culture from around the world, and it started at Alaska and ended at Alaska. So Tlingits at the beginning in this case, and Yupiks at the end. And as you went around the room, here's a young visitor to the museum who is viewing some Tlingit dancers in Russian sailor hats and button blankets. And then you can see behind, some of the older kids made a little box-like thing with the different weather conditions and set some of the dancers up in there. And then they also, down on this part, they had a description of the Tlingit culture and a map of where they came from, and for each of the cultures as they went around the room. And then these were some Asian dancers that you can see how they positioned on these little rounds of wood and merely stapled them on. So quite simple things. And then these were the Yupik dancers that they ended on. There were probably about 20 different cultures actually in the room, including one from the land of Hanalei, which is from a song. So the kindergarten kids completely made up the culture for that particular one. And it was based on their teacher who was on leave with a pregnancy leave, whose last name was Lee, and their substitute whose last name was Hannah. So the land of Hanalei. And this is a close-up of the Yupik dancers. And then each artist was individually credited for it. And then we go into regalia.
Okay. So here's a test. What's wrong with this piece of regalia? You see it?
The common problem with buttons.
So this is a teaching moment for us, is that the button robe is upside down on the figure. The collar, the border is down here, and it should have been up there. And that's what I think what's really fun about this exercise, and that's one of those teaching moments, is that you can look at appropriately dressing these dolls, the appropriateness of the regalia, and also looking at a little bit of history, talking about song leaders' paddles and clan hats. Who would wear a crest hat that has basketry rings on it? What are those crest hats made out of? What is the fabric used to make the button blankets, and what are the buttons made out of, and how are they worn?
Can I interrupt you for just a minute? One of the things we meant to emphasize is that none of us come from one of the Northwest Coast cultures or any Alaska Native cultures. So what our job is to do the dolls. So we're trying to create the figures and then patterns that could be used on these dolls, and then put them out there for elders, people who are actually from the Native cultures, to talk about and really provide the culture. It's not coming from us. We're providing the skeleton on which they can use these to go into the classrooms and excite kids with them.
Thank you. No, that's just fine. And let's see. I do have some things that are in the museum collection that we did base some of this material on. And kind of echoing what Mary Ellen said, a great way to do these programs is to incorporate the program with an elder or an artisan. In this case, we were actually introducing the kids to the doll maker, Mary Ellen, as a craftsperson. We also, I will mention as I'm showing some of these, this is the Hands Across Time robe that's in the museum collection. We have one of the weavers of the robe sitting in the back, Jan Criswell. They spent about 1,800 hours weaving this robe in the early 1980s, late 1980s, early 1990s. And you're seeing a lot more of those robes, but it's another thing that we can explore, that weaving style, the patterning style, a great opportunity to look at it as an art form, to begin to appreciate those art forms. As I mentioned before, Kiksati clan ceremonial tunic, a tunic can also be used, and I think doing these dolls in conjunction with kids that can go to a cultural event or go to a culture camp, see these items in action is really the best case scenario. But we're finding when we do these kids and these activities, and we have a lot of students that are Native students, There are many, more and more, as we're talking about during this conference with loss of language, there's more and more children that don't know what clan they belong to, don't have an understanding of that. So I think these things are just, again, a really important way to introduce it. Sailor's hat, these next images are things that we're actually going to create at these tables today in miniature. And this is a great hat. As I understand it, that they're based on a Russian-style sailor hat, but that there's a series of songs and dances called the Aleut series that are sometimes performed over here in Sitka, where they recognize the Russian presence here, as well as, and probably more importantly, recognizing the Aleut people who were forced into hunting for the Russians. We also have a couple of beaded headdresses and some bear's ears. The headdress was done by, I'm sorry, the beaded headband was done by Emma Marks. And it has with it a feather duster, which in the early 1900s, feather dusters became an item that were easy to get at a hardware, but the Tlingit people saw them as a great opportunity to add that adornment, and so they're really kind of a fun one to have. And the bear's ears were, Mary King designed those particular bear's ears for her husband, and their dancing regalia. But also they have history of that kind of bear's ears, were that they might be worn by a hunter to give him the fierceness and strength of a bear. So those are some of the kinds of things that you might be sharing with an individual. And you may have other stories. There's another picture of those bear's ears. Here we have a spruce root hat done by Selena, master weaver Selena Paratrovich, and has a nice rainbow pattern, diamond pattern on the bottom of the hat. And we'll show some replication of that. And this is Isabella and Charles Edenshaw hat that's in our collection. It has a raven motif on it. And then we have a balance of raven and eagle, and one of the things that you may want to do is, that's why we chose a raven and eagle as a bird and some of the regalia that might be worn as an explanation of moiety. And just these are just ideas that we have, and we really want to hear back from you on what might be appropriate, what might not, how you could use these, and share them back with us. We'd love to see some sharing going on here. And that ends our slideshow. And the song leaders paddle, excuse me, that particular song leaders paddle is something we're going to create at this table and talk about that. And so that will end my slideshow, and we'll get on with this activity because it's a fun one to do. And how we're going to do this is that we have 3 centers, obviously. The back center, we're making eagle, this center with Elizabeth making raven, and this center over here is making human figures. And I'm going to emphasize younger kids. These 2 tables are for probably 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th graders. If you were working with children that age, they're a little more complicated, and these would be kindergarten up to about 5th grade. Yeah.
And,
anything else? Okay.
As part of our presentation, we have this packet. It'll also be online at the Alaska State Museum website. So you can share it with other people you know. We want feedback. This is a work in progress, and we have learned so much from the people we've done this with. And also, we are going to be working with Ziploc bags for our supplies, so keep your supplies that you're not immediately using in your Ziploc bag so they don't get tossed in the center, you don't lose your pieces and parts. And each person, we're hoping, will make a figure, one of the birds, and some regalia for what they make. Okay, have fun. Yes?
Can you go back to the frog group slide, because I didn't know what portion of it was, but somebody in the audience might know.
Yes.
The white part near the center.
Are you looking at this ovoid here? And here?
Right.
Does anybody know the history on this robe? I wish Steve was still in the audience, because this wasn't the one choice I made. We were looking for a piece, a ceremonial tunic, but no, I don't know for sure. No answers? Yeah. I'm not sure about those two images other than the crest design. Okay. Okay. I guess I'm supposed to move to this side of the table so we can be filmed. I'm wondering, could I trade places with you? All right. Let's see. All right, this is a really fun doll to make with young kids. And the one thing that I haven't found a good replacement for is a pom-pom. And so Abby's here to join us. Abby is an expert at making these dolls. Are you 7 or 8 now? Yeah, she could be your tutor.
I need help. I need all the help I can.
And we need 2 more over here. I don't have at this table Ziploc bags. Let's see where those are. Okay. So each of you will take 3 chenille stems for this process. And keep in mind that the one that we're doing right now is for a 3rd through 5th grade student. It's an activity that takes about 20 minutes to do the figure at most. And you got everybody, 3. Okay. And I'm going to do this just by instructing. You're first going to create the body and attach it to the head. So bring your 2 ends of your chenille stem together. And then stick your finger in here so that you have a center point. It doesn't have to be hard, but just like that. Can you bring your 2 ends together? Just like that. Okay. Then, this is a bit tricky, but I want you to put your pom-pom right in the center so it's sort of even, on either side of that chenille stem. You got it. So just like that. So you just put your pom-pom, this looks like a headband, right across the middle of your head. Did you get it? So open up, and you're putting it right in the crook or the bend of that pom-pom. And when you get it in there, you want to kind of hold it back and wrap and pinch this around. This is called pinch and twist. Sometimes with children, I will teach them that technique of pinching and twisting as a separate exercise. Pom-poms are cheap, but teaching that bendable, what folding is, what twisting means, to twist it around. And just leave your legs dangling like this, nice and straight. They can kind of be smoothed together a little bit like that. Okay? But we're going to, once you're done, what do you have here? You have a head and long legs, but no arms or body. Now the next step, everybody's just you're going to use this as like a dowel. So I'm just going to hand you a marker. And the next step that we're going to focus on is coiling technique. Did everybody get one? Okay. So you can just watch for a second. I take a chenille stem and I hold it because I'm right-handed, so I'm going to hold this in my left thumb. If I were left-handed, I'd probably hold it with my right thumb. But anyway, I'm going to hold it like this, and I'm going to tightly wrap, not overlapping, but we're making kind of a spring. You see what I'm doing here? You're just going to wrap that stem all the way around this, kind of squeeze it together so that I get this nice tight coil. Nice tight coil. Start on the very end. Hold, while they're and like this. So put that in your right thumb, Abby, that very end. Hold it in your right thumb, and then twist with your left hand around and around. You've got it. So keep it on there, and get it really nice and tight. Kind of squish it together like that. Or with both fingers, I squish it like this, so you get a nice tight coil. Does that make sense? Squish and tight. Once you've got it squished and tight, really good job, you guys. Now you can remove your coil. You're going to set that aside for a moment. Now we've got to focus on arms, and we don't want to put the body until we do the arms. The arms are another tricky little part. Now remember, this is 3rd through 5th grade, so I don't do this kind of doll. I'll show you really quickly one doll, but we brought those supplies for, I guess, the Sheldon Jackson Museum, where we're doing this activity with kids on Saturday if you have a kid. So again, you're going to bring the ends of your chenille stem together like this and hold them and do that little bend right here with your finger right in the center. Very cool. And you're going to take your dowel and put it in that bend. You can hold it like this and wrap one arm this way and one arm that way. That's all you have to do. Just wrap one arm this way and one arm that way. Okay? And pull that off. When you pull it off, you should have a circle. Just, yep, pull it off. There you go. So you've got this circle with 2 arms. Next tricky step. You don't have to worry about it being too stiff. It just passes each other by. It doesn't have to be knotted or anything. And you've got one this way and one this way. Oh, you did a full coil. Oh, no, just wrap it. Just do this. Just like this.
Oh, okay.
So here you go. Use this one. That's fine. Not a problem.
Are they supposed to be straight out? Look how my
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. So you have a coil that has several wraps to it, we call it. And I notice I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wraps on mine. Between the 2nd and 3rd wrap, this is tricky, I'm going to just slide that in there. Just slide it in. The idea is when you look down at it, it still should look hollow, like this. It slides between the 2nd and 3rd, yep, that way. Yep, 2nd and 3rd one, so it's down just a little bit, like right, it might be, depending on where you go on the coil, but just slide it right in there. So make sure, look through yours like this, and make sure you can see, through it. It's hollow all the way through. That's this is really important that's hollow all the way through. You got it in? Very good. Okay. Now I want you to pick up your doll. And you see those chopsticks? You want to pinch your feet together like this. And all we're going to do is from the top here is we're going to slide. And you have to pinch those feet so he doesn't get caught in the coils because you want him to go all the way through. That's really fine. Because, you're going to end up bending these things to create movement, suggest movement. You want a dancer, right? You want a singer. You want a performer. So here we are. Now look at these really extremely long arms. They look very funny, and they're not going to stay that way. We're going to create a hand on the end of those arms. And trust me, 3rd through 5th graders can succeed in doing this. I want to go down about 2 inches on my arm and pinch it in the hand you do not write with. So you want to pinch it in your left hand if you're right-handed, or pinch it in your right hand. Abby will pinch it in her right hand because she's left-handed, which is very cool. Anyway, so you have about 2 inches, like kind of 2, I guess my thumb is a little longer than an inch, maybe the pinky, 2 of those, okay? We're going to then bend about a thumb width. Just bend a little tiny mitten. You're going to just make a hook like that. So you've got a long tail here. So you're going to hook it about a 1/2 inch up, and you still have an inch or so, just like that. Does that make sense? Yeah, go back, unbend it. Hold it, keep your fingers held where the 2-inch point is, Jan. Yeah, you hold it there, and then you bend another 1/2 inch above that. Okay? Okay. Then watch this step, if you would. You bring this together, and I literally hold on to the mitten part, and I wrap this around the wrist, and it makes a thumb. Isn't that just the cutest little thing you ever saw? And we can practice one more time. We've got the other arm. Yeah, and you'll have a little bit of an end that gives you your thumb. So I'm going to go another 2 inches on the other side. So kind of give yourself that 2 inches. Bring your hand, leave about a 1/2 inch, and bend that back. So you've got this. Then, so bend this back. So you've got 2 inches, and then bend back about another 1/2 inch. Okay, then hold, move, transfer to your other hand, and kind of hold that mitten and wrap the thumb. Sometimes with children, and like I said, 3rd through 5th graders, I might help them do one side and then they do the other side. It's kind of a repetitive motion. We now have, what I love about this guy is you can start to see every one of them has a different personality. Look at this. He looks totally different from yours, you know. I think mine's a guy. Yours is a pretty good-looking girl. We might become friends. I'm Raven. Anyway, so here you. Oh, okay. I'm.
How did you fly over this morning?
I know, it's very silly. Anyway, so here we have this doll, and we're going to set this aside. What we're going to make for this doll is a tunic and a clan hat today, and the way we're going to do that, some of these parts are done for you, but we went ahead and cut up some fabric. So to make your tunic, this was chosen as this, and this would give you an opportunity, which seems appropriate with the group we have here, that if you were doing a dance tunic that was either a Chilkat dance tunic or maybe it's a Raven's Tail dance tunic.
Did you get it wet?
It was damp, and I'll explain that. Mary Ellen is in the back of this book are doll maker's tips, which is really sort of fun. And one of her doll maker's tips is an extra step for the teacher, is that if you starch these and then iron them and then kind of press them down with a piece of wood, it mats the fibers, and it takes to a stamp really well, or it takes to drawing on it really well without bleeding, so you can get a nice crisp image. So as a doll maker and an artisan, that's a nice little detail, and it also allows you to get into those kind of details with kids. We find particularly from about 4th grade, you know this, 4th grade on, those details become really fun and kind of important. And so, sorry, did everybody get one of these? All right. The next step is to trace your tunic. We may or may not have to share some patterns here. Oh, and also, because they're slower, this is wallpaper. And I think it really looks like hide. We found that you can stamp it, but you got to let it dry, or else your stamp will smear, or you can draw on it. So if you would prefer to make yours out of wallpaper, you're welcome to do that. Or you can have both. I don't care. You can do two. I'll give you a pattern here. And, oops, I'm sorry. We may be sharing. What I'd like you to do on the back, these were already patterned for us. I think we had some kids. One of the things that I have it's really fortunate when you're at the museum is that high school students oftentimes want to come in and do their community service. So I usually will have a stack of things, and they actually, community service volunteers said, oh, we'll trace patterns for you. And we did this for younger kids. We were making tunics with really young kids. But there's no reason that a 3rd through 5th grader can't trace out their tunic on here. Some of these look a little short, but I think that'll be fine. So I'm going to give you a pattern. And if you would just use one and then share, or start cutting your other pattern out, if it's already made for you. So we'll give you some scissors here. And I have the feeling I didn't get the good fabric scissors. This is typical of when you're in school, isn't it? We were working on this silly activity guide, which I'm really happy we got done. till late last night. That's why I am silly. And because of that, I realized I forgot to make a doll out of this stuff. It's in the center. Where's the doll? Whoops. Okay. If you're finding your template isn't even, fold your template in half like that. Can you fold it in half this way? The other way. There you go. Match up the bottoms. Now, Nancy, what would you be telling children about tunics while they're cutting this out? Would you talk about the materials that tunics could be made out of for dance, and how when you go to an event, sometimes you'll see tunics that are made out of red felts, and maybe some of the different materials, but then also what the Tlingit word for it is, I think, a really important. Do you know the Tlingit word? You do, I bet. Say it again. Aklea kudads. Am I saying that right? Aklea kudads. Kudads. Okay. Cool. And then
Probably talk, for us, we'd probably talk about what songs we use them with.
Yeah.
Like the French.
Like a headband.
We've made
It does.
poker ones before, and we have stamps out where we'd let them know that you could only use certain crests.
That's
depending
right.
on what you are.
Right.
Let them know you can't just use anything.
Right. And one of the things that and I've wanted to know this one. This one is a little riskier for me. Is the crest use. We have some stamps here, but my feeling was that for kids, especially in the museum where I'm dealing with native and non-native kids, that I would explain to them that this doll, who's wearing this, would be wearing the crest that was appropriate to his clan lineage. So I'm not transferring that I am this and that I have the rights to that image, but that my doll is of that clan. And that's how I was introducing it with these young ages. Is that appropriate enough in your minds? The idea was that, I do want kids to appreciate heraldry, to really understand that there's appropriate times to wear this stuff, and appropriate. I didn't know, just talking to you, that there's appropriate songs. Well, that would be your clan, more clan affiliation, or with the regalia itself.
The regalia itself.
Okay.
We use them in the Tlingit series, and even the headdresses, we talk about which headdresses are wear when.
Okay. So if you're finished with a pattern, we can send one around. Did everybody get their pattern? Yeah. Turn it inside out, and I forgot. Did you, when you trace your pattern, be sure to trace that circle in the center. Did you get that? And then fold it inside out and fold it in half, and then cut the half circle like that. So you're just cutting. So if you fold it in half to cut your circle, it's a lot easier. Sorry, I got busy talking and I didn't explain that step. Yeah. So everybody's got that little trick. Mary Ellen does a great job of, which I think is very fun, and why I appreciate the artist and the doll maker too, is that it goes to trying through the doll to show the importance of the items. That is just, one of the things, I don't know if I mentioned this when I was up front, but two other things is that when we do this activity, we call it making miniatures, and we don't call it doll making. There's a couple reasons for that, is that, or sometimes we've called it Alaska action figures, and one is that it attracts the boys. I don't know if you caught that, but in a lot of those images up there, we'll have at least half boys for these activities, which is very cool. If we call it doll making, it's going to be all girls, and that's, I'm very proud of the fact that works. What was the other item? I don't remember right now. We'll just go on. So once you have a piece of regalia done, you can talk about, as we were just talking with Nancy here, about certain songs and the crest design and who would have the rights to a crest design. You can use this if you're in the classroom by using a really fine point marker. I just realized there was 2 steps that Mary Ellen likes me to do. You could create a design on there, which is difficult for a younger kid, or you might have stamps. And these are form line design stamps. And again, we just talk about the crest and who would wear, what the wearer having rights to that. So then that's just really stamping. So you're welcome to. And you can get one like that. If you want to, you should get a piece of paper. One of the things that Mary Ellen likes to do, and I'm going to just give one of these away, is that with a stamp, you can practice kind of lining up that stamp in the center, pressing that image in so you get a nice crisp image. And that's where the difference between having this fabric starched and pressed, it's quite crisp. Yes, absolutely. So you're welcome to stamp with a crest if there's one that's appropriate for your doll. There is.
When we were teaching years ago, we were teaching little kids how to do Raven's tail. But you can't. The warp is too expensive. The hand spun warp out of the merino wool for little kids. So we took cotton mop heads. With the...
Oh, very cool.
We starched them. We took them apart and laid them out and starched them. And then for little guys, that was an expensive way to have warp.
Wow. How young?
We're talking about 15 years ago. I'm maybe 8 or 10 or something.
So Jan, you're describing you used a mop head, so you were actually weaving a small pouch with younger children. Yeah. The whole pouch. That's very cool.
Yeah, it was a little pouch with little kids, and it was a real inexpensive way to do that because warp is expensive.
Okay. So are all of you familiar with double-sided tape? Double-sided tape is one of a doll maker's best friends for miniatures. And what that double-sided tape allows you to do is, after you dress your doll, hold the seams down on this thing. So I can demonstrate that. I just put a little bit of tape on either side, like that. Right along the side seams, I've got some double-sided tape, just like this. I have found, for some reason, this is a little damp too, so we might have trouble, that if I put it on both sides of the seam, the double-sided tape sticking to itself sticks better. That defies logic to me, but it does work. And so there are some tapes in the center if you want to tape your seams.
Double-sided tape on the sides?
You put the double-sided tape on the side seams, like that. What do you need?
Is there an eagle?
I think it's at the other table. My apologies. One of these people has I think they have it over there. Let me double check. You don't have stamps at this center, right?
I don't remember glue on the side that has the pen marks on it. Remember it's a little...
Do you have an eagle stamp? No, that's not the... Oh. Mary Ellen, do you have an eagle stamp?
Yes. I think so. This,
We have a couple of eagles at my table.
these are all stamps there.
Oh, thank you. Okay, let's see. We have more stamps. Let's see. Mary Ellen is. Let's see if we've got. Oh my, we've got all kinds of things. So these are her stamps that have. Do you want to take a look and see what's in there? One would think.
Be a Thunderbird.
Yeah, he does look. Okay, there's an eagle stamp over here if anybody needed eagle.
I stamp my
Oh, your cell phone?
looks like a stamp.
Oh, a friend of mine sent me a funniest thing where it was a YouTube, it was called iPad Dad, and she gave her old father an iPad, and he's in the kitchen using it as a chopping board, and then he slides the onions off and sticks it in the dishwasher.
Oh my.
It's a really fancy cutting board. So.
How cute is that?
So I'm going to give you each a Ziploc bag so you can put some of your parts in it and not lose those, because we've got a clan hat to make. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go back to this a minute. Do we have your... So how it goes on is, believe it or not, this head squishes pretty good, and so you just squish his head through. And if you're having trouble, if that that hole is too small, I want you to put a little slit. So here's what you need to do. Put a little slit in the back of his clothing. And then it will go over his head.
Just one side, whatever side you choose.
The image? Okay.
I bucked the system and I put it on both sides.
But you have to make sure you don't get your image upside down and backwards. Because like that button blanket, minor details, and my image is not sticking well today, and I think I didn't let it dry long enough. That is one of the dangers of the leather, is that you letting it dry long enough. So your wool, I've set that aside.
My old guy is like my old robe, my old dancer from last big skin cross.
So unfortunately, I'm not the doll maker that Mary Ellen is, so I probably didn't. I didn't describe that you want to make sure that your image, when you hold it, is facing towards the center. Whatever side you do it on, it has to face. The feet have to be at the base of the small side of the rectangle, like that, and that's it. Okay, so to make this. We've got two more parts to this thing. Oh. Okay. So this doll that we're making today is an important clan leader, and he has a hat with basketry rings and ermine tassels. Mary Ellen wanted me to share different things she's used to make an ermine tassel. One thing that's in your activity book is that we actually have a photocopy paper image of an ermine. It's a little bigger than that. We also have just a piece of pipe cleaner that doesn't have wire in it. These are different sizes. She found these at a fly fishing store. What I find is easy and readily available are these thick pipe cleaners. And with a little bend in it, you can just kind of hook it into the top of a hat. And I think they look really cute. So we were going to do that one today. In the name of time, what I have here is these were stenciled by kids already, so I'm just going to give you one that's pre-done, but you can do this with a stencil. And there's a variety of, these are all pieces of wallpaper, which is kind of fun. So we just use textured wallpaper to represent split spruce root weaving. But one of the things that I've done with some kids is actually do some patterning, just like we had Selena Pratovich's, and you could do a diamond patterning on it, for instance, to represent that rainbow pattern or whatever variety of patterns. Do you have specific names for patterns that you use, Jan?
Skip stitch, you mean?
Mm-hmm. Like when they're in the diamonds. And, yeah. So here, just I'll just let you go through those and pick which one you like best.
I'll have to send you guys. Before I moved here, we worked with Nora and that book, the weaving book, that little white yellowish one that had the names of the different weaving. We worked with her to fix the orthography so it's correct now. And so I have all of that. So I'll send it to you. Oh my! How cool is that?
Maybe I need to have like yours, Abby.
So if I'd like, so you can go ahead and just cut out your hat. Did I steal your scissors?
No,
I'm sorry.
we're sharing.
Oh, we should have more.
What if we have to go outside and use
I want to point out that, again, this will dry. Here's a fine marker. And in this booklet, for instance, one of the things that I did, and we'll have these online available to you. Let's see. Is that we actually had fun and thought, we did basketry rings that are actually really miniaturized stitching. And we also did, although Steve was giving me a lot of grief about this, he goes, that looks really funky. But when it comes in the round, it actually starts to, it's not even, they're not perfect diamonds. But it's really kind of fun, and when you can print that off on a gold paper. It looks pretty convincing, but you might look at that as an idea, or the image in an actual hat. Do some little drawings, and
blue, you could use that blue color, when they're painted.
Yes, absolutely. And one of the things that I've done is I try to just give the idea of weaving and texture by putting sort of some X's along the edge. This isn't very authentic looking, but what it allows you to do is that it starts to give you the idea that it's woven, for instance.
You might be able to stamp, some hats are painted, you might be able to stamp the hat.
You can, and that's another thing that we've done is put a stamp design on it, which is Mary Ellen has one that's just like this, that's out of felt. So this is a felt version, and that takes to a stamp really nicely when it's flat, is putting the stamp on it. So that is another method. And so if you want to stamp your hat, or if you want to take another piece of, I don't have any tan fabric, I just have white fabric. It's not quite wide enough to make a hat. So I was just doing, I was just going to do an edge just to show you that, you can mark it up. You can also just start to get just a little bit of an idea that it's woven. This can work, and it might not work well enough for you. But from a distance, I was doing something to try to replicate that there's some sort of weave on this thing.
So the 3-strand would be up here.
Yes.
So you could, sort of indicate where that, and then put the slip stitch.
Right. So doing like this where there's a round.
Yeah.
Right.
Round parts to the slip stitch.
Right. Right. So I don't know that that's right, but you might have some ideas. Okay, and then you can just take a little piece of tape, and we didn't bring regular tape, I don't think, with us. Oh, is it? You can put tape, but if you just put a little bit of tape on the inside like that, and cut off the extra, just a little bit of the extra right there on the edge, and then fold it in, it'll stick. You know, it's on that little piece there. Does that make sense? You can use a double-sided. The double-sided is just put a little, just make a, you know, your kind of flattened cone and tape it shut. I tape it on the inside. You can put it just on the tiny little overlapping seam. That's a detail that Mary Ellen will teach you in the upper levels. I don't worry too much at this level. It's not an important detail to me. And I'm going to give you, it's really hard to find a material to replicate that gorgeous green blue. And so you either end up with blue or moss green. And so Mary Ellen was kind of excited that she found some blue. So we're going to do, but I think it's a bit on the too blue side, I think. I like them. I did one with let's look at this guy here. Oh, here, this guy has a hat, and he has moss green. And this one I used permanent marker, which that's another thing you can do. But you know,
How cute is that?
Oh, for the
just yeah, just for texture. Yeah. So we are going to do another one of those coils out of blue. My apologies for the color. Mary Ellen was mentioning that what we should do is actually dye our own. Dye our own. Okay.
for the older kids, that might
Be fun. Yeah. Yeah.
First, you got to try it though, right?
Yeah. Oh, you know what? My apologies. I'm getting ahead of myself. I use a pencil for this coil. That one's pretty big. So smooth that out. My apologies. I looked at it as soon as I did it and realized that's a body size. So if you put it around this pencil, there's pens and pencils around here, and there's another, yep. Yeah, we'll be done. I guess they're not going to get through all these, are we? And so a little coil around a pencil is a better deal. And then I'll give you an ermine. I take this ermine, and actually I like to take the black marker and darken the very tip of it. So you have that little tiny black tip on the end of the tail. And then when I put a little hook in it and just hook it in the end of it, just.
How cool is that?
What do you, isn't that sweet?
We were walking in the park a couple weeks ago, and there was an ermine that ran by the beach into the park.
Oh.
Really? Who was that? Here you go, dear.
Absolutely, I'm sorry. We'll give you a tassel. The other thing that we're going to do is then we need to glue it onto the hat. And it looks like this glue. No, well, no, you just put a little glue on the base, just like that. Less is more. So this is a lot of glue. When Mary Ellen does this, she puts a little dollop of glue on a piece of tape, and they do it with a toothpick to keep the amount, a sane amount. And then you just set it on the hat like that, and it will dry in just a couple of minutes. So just use that little.
Okay.
Here, can I give you my little? Oh.
Let me
Well, you can make that after. I mean, you can make that.
Just hook it on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just put a little hook in there.
We can share that. Yeah.
Bend it.
I'm going to leave that little glue for you guys. Ermines, you got your ermine, you got your coil, and you just put a little tiny hook on the opposite end, not the black end, just a little, like 1/4 inch, and it just sets in there. Just hook and you just set it in there. Little dab of glue will do. How about I give you a little dab of glue? I've got a dirty finger.
Got a glue finger?
I do. Ooh, very nice ermine tassel. There you go.
Drop it right on the middle. Let it dry.
Dollop of glue.
Here, you want my dollop? And you can finish it up. Well, you might need a little more than that, huh? Yeah, and that's just to hold it.
This was the double stick, right?
You can use double stick or you can use regular tape. I like regular tape myself on the inside. There's regular tape, yeah. Yeah.
I feel as though I should decorate mine, but how did you get the circle? How did you do your circle?
How did I do?
Yeah, on top.
I did it when it was flat and I just drew a circle.
You hand.
I just hand drew it. I just hand drew it with that. There you got the little marker in front of you, Jan, right there. Okay, so double stick tape is great for sticking this hat on your figure, on your guy. But your hat probably is going to take a little bit to dry. So I'm getting ahead of myself just a bit here. You can set your hat aside and just let it dry. I just want to show you what it looks like. You know, it's too wet. It's too wet. So, you know, you would just set them on there. But let that dry, because once it dries, it'll stay, you know, but it just needs that moment. It is pretty sweet. So just set it aside, because there's one more piece. And if you want to put your, well, I'm not going to worry about it. Just put them in front of you someplace where they won't. We have some, I'm going to do a little cleanup here so I have a clean work area and don't get anything confused. I'm going to pass along a Ziploc bag and maybe you can stick your scraps in so we can see what we're doing. Something in sharing our knowledge, I'm hoping that you might have even a better idea. We actually, we knew we would run out of time, so we took popsicle sticks and cut them for you by just clipping them here, clip here, and then letting it slice. And with the idea of turning these into either a canoe paddle or, in this case, a song leader paddle. Yeah, so a popsicle stick. Yeah. So I want to give you one of those. This is something that I did not finish in our guides, but I also wanted to give examples of doing some form line work on there. These bleed really badly, and so they're not exactly. But you could paint them red. You know, at least paint them red and maybe make a black outline on them. And so you get the idea. Okay, so we do have some red pens. So I'm just going to show you something that I thought worked reasonably well. Was if you had a wider marker. This one's kind of neat. It's got the rounded side this way. Yeah, and so I didn't do anything with another one that I did, except to put sort of a black outline on it. Because I find that this is one of those things that they almost need to be coated some way to not bleed. So they're really tough. You could introduce form line with just learning to make an ovoid on here, but it loses its symbolism for me. This is a little tougher. So I stuck with how a song leader paddle works, and then what are some traditional colors of song leader paddles. Yeah. And you can add little hairs. And the way to do that, I did not bring it with me, but we have added little black yarn, and those glue really easily. They glue really easy to that edge. It's a great idea. Yeah, I like that.
I'm sorry.
I didn't bring black yarn, but adding a row of pieces of black yarn on here, painting it red, and maybe putting a little bit of black outline to it. Would you put the black outline on it? I think it kind of accentuates it a little bit and shows the use of those two very important colors. So if you'd like to put there are well, I'll just turn these over. Here you go, ladies. You can trade off and on markers, and there's more in the box. Okay. Here, I'll get some. You know, it is fair, because this is a great opportunity to talk about the division of labor on hats, paddles. Who traditionally, this isn't the case anymore, but this isn't necessarily the case anymore, but who did the painting and who did the weaving? So, yeah, you got to change your clothing. Yeah. I will demonstrate for you. Let me find how to make a simpler doll. How old is your daughter?
She's 5, almost
perfect. So this is a doll that I commonly do with 5, 6-year-olds. So we have. This is called Bump Chenille. Bump Chenille is just really fun stuff. And you need 2 pieces of a 1.5 piece actually of Bump Chenille. So you only need 1.5 of these. And doing this same process is that we take the ends and bring them together and put that. And then we still have to center the doll's head in there. And bring it around and pinch it. So the pinch and twist is the tough part for them. But then you take the other half a stem and you put that right at the midpoint around their neck, and you wrap an arm this way and an arm this way, and you have a doll.
Oh, cool.
And the other thing you can do is give them a very svelte, skinny waist by just twisting that center together. And it has a tendency to make it like a body and legs. If you can get fancy with these too. Another thing that we've done with these is that we've taken that second half and wrapped it again here and here, and just brought these together on the end, and it makes the legs a little sturdier. Something like that. Does that make sense? Okay. That's a little more maybe than a kinder wants to do, but you can certainly do that. And so Bump Chenille is really fun, really simple. Here, we'll just give you that one. Yeah. I'm low on these. I'm sorry. I've got a kids' activity to do on Saturday here with them, and we didn't realize we were low.
Okay.
We are.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, there's that activity this Saturday.
And you tape the hat on?
Yes, a double stick tape on the inside of the hat, and then tape the hat on the head. Okay. I want to end this with saying that a perfect way to get these dolls to stand up is to make a foot out of the last ½ inch, like this, and then hot gluing this 1 foot to a rock or a shell, and that's what we did here, is that we hot glued him to a rock. 1 foot. This fell off. Let's see, he stands up. We did get into try to get into a little bit of form line on that one. Yeah, aren't they cute? Button blankets we're going to do this Saturday at the museum. If, no, yeah, just put it up in there. Little guys, if they're really struggling with their double stip tape, I don't have an issue with this. I think it still works, is that you can just tape the outside seam. And really, if you get the crest image on there, to not wipe off, which it did better with the felt. It's always learning, so I didn't think about that when I grabbed those stamps, and some of the stamps don't work as well as others. Okay. I just bent those feet. Let me see if somebody have the hot glue guns. I will plug in the hot glue gun. Okay, there's a hot glue gun up here, and there are rocks up here. So the one thing I can't do is bring the hot glue to you, but we do have rocks and hot glue, and we can glue your foot to one if you're ready. So let's pick a rock. And actually, these little bit heavier rocks are better. Like, you can pick whatever rock you want. Okay, so let's, we obviously don't, it won't matter because you can just bend the, yes, it does, but you'll want to hold that right there. Yes, you can. That rock might not be. Nope, that one's a template. You can take one of those or those. Okay. Now you get to start futzing, so he gets into some. Bend him at the elbows. You can. I wrap it between the thumb and the mitten. Two more steps. So to suggest motion, I suggest that you bend at the shoulders and that you bend at the elbows. Start thinking about that. And with kids, I will say, okay, put your hands like this. Put your hands at your side and your hands up. Where are your thumbs? Where your thumbs are up. So you're going to want to bend your hands so your thumbs are up, or in like this.
I'm trying to shove it in here.
I don't know. Here's what I find. When you bend those arms at the elbows, Jan, and you start to put the paddle, like you can wrap this mitten around it and wrap the thumb around the other direction, and you do this sort of thing, it starts to not look so long. Yeah. You can bend at the knees, and think about where the knees might be. And look at what starts to happen with these guys. They really start to look like they're in motion.
Stable.
Okay, you're hot gluing. Thank you, Nance. Yeah. Pick a bigger rock, and you can just put 1 foot. If you put 1 foot to the rock and not 2, it gives you the ability to make more of a movement. But use a little bigger rock than I used on some of these earlier ones because they don't want to, they get heavy. Less is more. The less glue you use, the quicker it dries and the more it stays. So you use too much glue and it takes forever to dry. That's Mary Ellen's another doll maker tip that's in the back of this guide is less is more. So one of the things when we were working with kids that she taught me is, one, we keep our work surface a little cleaner, but putting a piece of masking tape down and then putting a 1/4-inch dollop of glue when they're ready to glue and giving them a toothpick and using the toothpick and that little tiny dab of glue, and it controls the amount. Yeah. I think they're fun. Put the song leader paddle in them for just a second. It does. And the deal is why I like the long arms is because you start wrapping the hands. They wrap around, and whenever you make a tool, and you can make a variety of tools.
I don't get it. How do you get the paddle to say they have fingers and thumbs?
Well, you put the thumb. If you were to grab a paddle, like if you were grabbing a paddle, wouldn't you grab it like this, right? So that's what I did here. Is the thumb is on the back wrapped around, and I put the paddle in it. Well, you put the paddle in first. Where's your paddle? Okay. So I would, if I were you, I would bend maybe his elbows. This is cool. Yep, it can. And then I wrap. Let's see, I got to think about where my thumb is. So I'd wrap my thumb around the back side and the mitten around this side. And then, bring his thumb down.
But look at how long his neck is now.
Well, you slide it to the distance you like it. That's kind of fun, isn't it? So you make it just the right. And then you might want to bend his... You might want to bend his feet.
Low-going guy, you know.
Yep, you can. You put them on that rock, and the bigger that's one thing about the big rock. And you don't have to glue both feet. You can glue both feet, but if you glue one, it gives you the ability to make some really dramatic motions. Yeah.
I think my feet a little big.
A little bit. Yep. About 3/8 of an inch on the foot works pretty well. So, give me some input.
That's fun. I think that,
I like it.
What do you think? Yeah?
I think it'll be. I like the button blanket one.
Yep.
This is even enough for kinders. We could do this with our kinder friends.
Yep,
Yeah.
there she is.
Button blanket, there's another way. We're going to demonstrate that on Saturday. We didn't demonstrate. I gave you instructions, though. There's patterns and instructions in that booklet. Another thing about these activities that works really, really well is don't forget construction paper. For making button blankets, a red piece of construction paper, and then we give you the template for the center, and then you just darken the borders in black. So the center is red and with black borders, only because then you can stamp on that red center. If you do it black center, it's hard to. So we give you a pattern for that sort of thing, but doing it out of construction paper is really great. And it glues easily. So Nancy, these, and if you want me to send you a website, these are really, really inexpensive, but you ordering them from like Create for Less or some of these places that have inexpensive shipping. Bump Chenille, I don't know if you watched me make that doll. That pattern, how to make that doll is in there. And this is the doll to make with kinders. Again, here. Oh, you can use a few of these up. I want you to make one. Who's who?
Wobbly legs, I guess.
So,
It's like a bobblehead.
so if you would be making these kids, bend that in half.
Show me how to use this.
Put this in there. I like this, and pinch it again. Then you can twist the middle just a little bit so he's got kind of a waist and has. That's really all there is to it. Then you take a half a stem and set it behind the neck. So you can lay it down like this if you're with a child, and wrap that arm over this way and this arm over this way to lock it on, and your doll is done. So that doll is done. It's very simple, and that's the Kinder doll. Yeah.
There's just half of one for the arms, huh?
It is half of one of her arms, and that is in that booklet that we gave you, that activity booklet. Also, you can download, you can Xerox those patterns too, but you can download that off our website as well. But, yeah, there you go.
This was a lot of fun, Miss Lisa.
Oh, thank you.
Now, we need to negotiate.
On what? You want to review this curriculum and tell me what? What are we negotiating for? And I'm on microphone. Just remember that. What?
So I saw an email from Museum Mary
Yeah.
to Annie.
When?
Before I it came, I guess, before I emailed about that class in June when I'm over there.
Yeah, and I also got.
Take a picture of Nancy's phone.
Yeah, you talk. Did you talk to me about that? We talked about that, right? Somebody did. Or did? Okay.
No, I don't have an iPhone on my camera. A little drum. Is she cute?
Okay, I think this kind of wraps up this presentation, just so that you know.